What if we told you that Aladdin's palace wasn't just a fairy tale, but was inspired by the real golden halls of Baghdad's House of Wisdom? That Sinbad's impossible voyages were based on actual merchant routes that connected three continents? The Arabian Nights stories you know aren't just fantasy, they're echoes of real history, real people, and real adventures that shaped the medieval world. Today, we're diving deep into the true stories behind these legendary tales, and what we've discovered will completely change how you see these beloved stories of Middle Eastern folklore. The Arabian Nights, or 1001 Nights, represents one of the most influential collections of Middle Eastern folklore ever assembled. These stories have captivated audiences for over a millennium, from the courts of medieval Baghdad to modern Hollywood blockbusters. But here's what most people don't realize. Many of these tales weren't born from pure imagination. They emerged from the bustling markets of Baghdad, the dangerous trade routes of the Indian Ocean, and the real political intrigue of the Abbasid Caliphate. The mythology we know today was actually rooted in historical events, real people, and genuine adventures that happened across the Islamic Golden Age. We're about to uncover the historical truths hiding behind these legendary tales, and trust us, the real stories are even more fascinating than the myths. Let's start with the most famous ruler in Arabian Nights, Harun al-Rashid. In the stories, he's portrayed as a wise, almost mythical caliph who wanders Baghdad in disguise, dispensing justice and encountering magical adventures. But the real Harun al-Rashid was far more impressive than any fictional character. Ruling from 786 to 809 CE, he presided over the Islamic Golden Age when Baghdad was the largest city in the world. His court attracted scholars, poets, and intellectuals from across three continents. The House of Wisdom, his legendary library and research center, really did exist, and it was every bit as magnificent as Aladdin's palace in the tales. Here's where it gets really interesting. Many Arabian Nights stories featuring Harun al-Rashid were actually based on real events recorded by court historians. His nighttime walks through Baghdad weren't just folklore, they were documented political strategy. He genuinely would disguise himself to monitor his people's concerns and root out corruption. The real Baghdad under al-Rashid was a city of almost magical possibilities. It had running water, street lamps, hospitals, and the world's first pharmacy. To medieval audiences hearing these stories, Baghdad's actual technological marvels seemed as fantastical as any genie's magic. Now, here's something that will blow your mind about Sinbad. While the character himself is fictional, his 7 voyages map perfectly onto real medieval trade routes. The dangers he faced, storms, pirates, hostile ports, were everyday realities for merchants sailing between Baghdad, India, and China. We've traced Sinbad's journeys through historical records, and they follow established routes used by Arab, Persian, and Chinese traders. His encounters with strange creatures and exotic peoples reflect real cultural exchanges that happened along the Silk Road and maritime spice routes. The Valley of Diamonds from Sinbad's second voyage? It corresponds to real diamond mines in India that Arab merchants accessed through dangerous mountain passes. The rock bird that could carry off elephants? It's likely based on sailor tales about the extinct Epiornis, a massive bird from Madagascar that medieval traders would have encountered. Even the magical elements in these stories had real-world inspiration. The flying carpets weren't just fantasy, they represented the incredible speed and apparent impossibility of the medieval trade networks that connected distant civilizations. But wait until you hear about the most dramatic, real event that inspired these tales. The most dramatic connection between Arabian Nights and real history centers on one pivotal event, the fall of the Barmakids. This political purge in 803 CE shattered the Golden Age of Baghdad and directly inspired some of the most famous tales in the collection. The Barmakids were a powerful Persian family who served as viziers to Harun al-Rashid for decades. Yahya ibn Khalid al-Barmaki and his sons essentially ran the empire, while al-Rashid focused on intellectual pursuits. They were brilliant administrators, patrons of learning, and the real power behind the throne. Then, in a single night in 803 CE, everything changed. al-Rashid ordered the arrest and execution of the entire Barmakid family. The reasons remain historically unclear. Some sources suggest they became too powerful, others point to personal betrayals or religious differences. This traumatic event became the template for numerous Arabian Nights stories about trusted advisors who fall from grace, magical transformations that reverse fortunes overnight, and the dangerous game of court politics. The sudden, almost supernatural reversal of the Barmakid's fate echoes through tales like The Merchant and the Genie and The Three Apples. The historical impact was enormous. The Barmakid's fall marked the beginning of the end for Baghdad's golden age. Their administrative genius had held the empire together, and their patronage had supported the intellectual flowering that made Baghdad the center of world learning. Within decades of their destruction, the Abbasid Caliphate began fragmenting. The House of Wisdom declined, trade routes shifted, and the magical city that had inspired so many stories started its slow decay. The real tragedy behind the mythology was that an entire civilization's peak moment was cut short by political paranoia. The aftermath of these historical events shaped how Middle Eastern folklore developed for centuries. As Baghdad's political power declined, storytellers began mythologizing its golden age. The real Harun al-Rashid became larger than life. The actual trade networks that connected civilizations became magical journeys. This transformation from history to mythology served an important purpose. As the Islamic world faced invasions, civil wars, and political fragmentation, these stories preserved the memory of a time when Muslim civilization led the world in science, philosophy, and culture. The tales evolved as they spread along the same trade routes that Sinbad had sailed. Each storyteller added local elements, cultural details, and contemporary concerns. Persian storytellers emphasized magical elements. Arab versions focused on desert adventures. Indian influences brought in elements of Hindu and Buddhist mythology. By the time European scholars began collecting these stories in the 18th century, they had become a complex tapestry of historical memory, cultural identity, and pure imagination. The original historical events were still there, but they were now wrapped in layers of folklore and mythology that made them universal rather than specifically historical. Understanding the historical truths behind Arabian Nights doesn't diminish their magic, it enhances it. These stories work because they're grounded in real human experiences. The ambition and downfall of powerful leaders, the dangers and rewards of long-distance trade, the delicate balance between justice and power. The real Harun al-Rashid's Baghdad was more wondrous than any fictional palace because it actually existed. Real merchants did sail dangerous seas to bring back exotic goods and incredible tales. Real political intrigue did destroy lives and empires overnight. What makes these stories eternal isn't just their fantasy elements, it's their connection to fundamental human truths about power, adventure, and the rise and fall of civilizations. The mythology preserves historical memory while making it accessible to audiences across cultures and centuries. The Arabian Nights remind us that the line between history and legend is often thinner than we imagine. Sometimes the most important truths are preserved not in historical chronicles, but in the stories people tell about their past. Which of these historical connections surprised you most? Did you expect to find real trade routes behind Sinbad's voyages, or actual political events behind the court intrigue? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're fascinated by the hidden history behind legendary tales, subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into forgotten civilizations and the real stories behind historical myths. Until then, remember, the most incredible stories are often the true ones.